The gunshot that shattered the afternoon quiet of Bandera, Texas, wasn't aimed at her hotel, but Grace Harper still felt it like a physical blow to her chest as she stood behind the mahogany counter, her hands freezing on the guest ledger she'd been updating. It was September 1883, and violence had become as common as dust in this corner of Texas hill country, but that didn't mean she'd grown numb to it. The sound echoed through the open windows of the Harper House Hotel, sending a chill down her spine despite the warm autumn air that drifted through the building she'd inherited from her father 2 years prior. Grace was 26 years old, unmarried by choice rather than circumstance, with auburn hair she kept in a practical bun and green eyes that missed little. She'd turned down 3 marriage proposals in as many years, much to the dismay of the town's matchmaking matrons. The hotel was her life, her purpose, the place where she felt most herself. She'd grown up in these halls, learned the business from her father, and when he'd passed from pneumonia in the winter of 1881, she'd taken over completely, proving to the skeptical townsfolk that a woman could run an establishment just as well as any man. The front door swung open with enough force to set the bell jangling wildly. Grace looked up to see Doc Morrison rushing past, his medical bag clutched tight, not even offering his usual friendly greeting. Through the still open door, she could see a crowd gathering down the street near the saloon. Her heart sank. Another fight, another shooting, another reminder that Bandera straddled the line between civilization and chaos. She was about to step outside to see what had happened when a figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright sunlight. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with dust covering his clothes and a weariness in his stance that spoke of long days in the saddle. He removed his hat as he stepped inside, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the ends and eyes the color of storm clouds. A jagged scar ran along his left jawline, but it didn't detract from features that Grace immediately recognized as handsome, even beneath the layer of trail dirt. "Madam," he said, his voice rough and low, "I'm looking for a room. Hopefully somewhere quiet where a man can get some rest, without worrying about stray bullets finding their way through the walls." Grace found herself staring for a moment before she recovered her composure. "You've come to the right place. The Harper House Hotel has the thickest walls in town, built with limestone blocks. My father insisted on it, said if we were going to charge premium rates, we needed to offer premium protection." A ghost of a smile touched the stranger's lips. "Practical man, your father, he was." Grace opened the ledger, dipping her pen in ink. "How long will you be staying with us?" "Not sure yet. At least a week, maybe longer. Depends on some business I need to attend to." He pulled out a leather wallet, placing several coins on the counter. "Name's Isaac Armstrong. I'm a horse trader by profession. Came down from Colorado looking to establish some new routes through Texas." Grace wrote his name in her careful script, trying to ignore the way her pulse had quickened. She'd checked in hundreds of guests over the years, but something about Isaac Armstrong made her feel suddenly aware of how plain her work dress was, how she must look with ink stains on her fingers and wisps of hair escaping their pins. "I'm Grace Harper, the owner here. We serve breakfast at 7, dinner at 6. There's a bathhouse out back, fresh water twice daily. Laundry service is available for an extra fee." She recited the information automatically while selecting a key from the board behind her. "I'll give you room 12, second floor, facing the courtyard rather than the street. It's quieter." "Much obliged, Miss Harper." Isaac took the key, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. His hands were calloused, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. "Is there somewhere I can stable my horses? I've got 3 with me, and they need better care than I've been able to give them on the trail. Miller's livery, 2 blocks east. Tell Samuel I sent you and he'll give you a fair rate." Grace found herself wanting to keep him talking, to learn more about this weathered cowboy who'd walked into her hotel. "If you don't mind my asking, why Bandera? It's not exactly a major trading hub." Isaac set his saddlebags down, rolling his shoulders as if working out the kinks from days of riding. "I've got a cousin who ranches about 30 miles north of here. He wrote me saying there's good money to be made in these parts if a man has quality horses to sell. The army's always looking for good mounts, and the ranchers need working animals. Figured I'd come down and see for myself." Another gunshot cracked through the air, closer this time. Isaac's hand moved instinctively toward his hip, where Grace could see the worn grip of a revolver holstered at his side. But he didn't draw it, just remained alert, his whole body tensed for action. Grace's mouth went dry. "It's not usually this bad. We've had some trouble lately with a gang that's been operating in the area. They've been hitting ranches, stealing cattle and horses. The sheriff's trying to organize a response, but so far they've stayed one step ahead. And the shooting just now, I don't know yet. Could be related, could be just the usual Saturday afternoon entertainment." Grace heard the bitterness in her own voice. She'd grown tired of the violence, tired of patching up her guests' fears, tired of wondering if her hotel would be next on someone's list of targets. Isaac studied her with those storm-gray eyes, and Grace had the uncanny feeling he saw more than she'd intended to reveal. "This hotel means a lot to you." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Everything. It's all I have left of my father, and it's my livelihood. I've put everything into making it the best establishment in Bandera. I won't let outlaws or anyone else drive me out of business or run me off." "I believe you." Isaac picked up his saddlebags again. "If you'll point me toward room 12, I'll get cleaned up and then see to my horses. Been a long ride, and I'm looking forward to sleeping in a real bed again." Grace came around from behind the counter, smoothing her skirts. "I'll show you up. Follow me." She led him through the lobby, past the sitting area where 2 elderly women were having tea and pretending not to stare at the newcomer, and up the wide staircase her father had commissioned from a carpenter in San Antonio. The wood gleamed from her constant polishing, and the runner down the center was Turkish, another of her father's extravagances that she maintained carefully. The second-floor hallway was lined with doors, 12 in total, and Grace walked to the one at the far end. She unlocked it and stepped aside to let Isaac enter first. The room was one of her favorites, with a large bed covered in a wedding ring quilt her mother had made before she died of cholera when Grace was 10, a sturdy wardrobe, a washstand with a porcelain basin and pitcher, and a window that looked out over the small courtyard where she grew herbs and vegetables. "This is real nice," Isaac said, setting his bags on the trunk at the foot of the bed. "Better than most places I've stayed." Grace felt a flush of pride. "I try to make my guests comfortable. If you need anything at all, just let me know. I'm usually either in the office behind the front desk or in the kitchen. We've got a full dining room downstairs if you'd like dinner tonight. The cook, Mrs. Chen, makes the best pot roast in Texas." "Mrs. Chen?" Isaac raised an eyebrow. "She came here from San Francisco with her husband during the silver rush that never quite materialized in this part of Texas. He died in a mining accident, and my father hired her when I was 15. She's been with us ever since." Grace realized she was lingering, looking for excuses to stay in this room with this stranger. "I should let you rest." "Grace," Isaac said, and the sound of her name in his deep voice did something strange to her insides. "Thank you. For the room, for the information, for everything." It's been a while since anyone's gone out of their way to make me feel welcome somewhere." She met his eyes and saw something there that called to a loneliness she'd been carrying for longer than she cared to admit. "You're welcome, Isaac. I hope Bandera treats you well." As she left the room and pulled the door closed behind her, Grace leaned against the wall for a moment, pressing a hand to her chest where her heart was beating far too fast. She was being ridiculous. Isaac Armstrong was a guest, nothing more. He'd be gone in a week or two, riding off to his next destination, and she'd be here as always, running her hotel, living her careful, controlled life. But as she made her way back downstairs, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the man in room 12 had brought something into her world that she hadn't even known she was missing. The dinner service that evening was busier than usual. Word had spread about the shooting, which had turned out to be a dispute over a card game that left one man with a bullet in his shoulder and another in jail, awaiting the circuit judge. The dining room hummed with conversation as guests and locals alike gathered to dissect the incident and speculate about the ongoing troubles with the outlaw gang. Grace moved through the room, ensuring everyone had what they needed, directing the serving girl she'd hired last month and trying not to watch the door for Isaac's appearance. He came in just as she was delivering a basket of fresh bread to a family from Austin, and she felt his presence like a physical thing even before she turned to look at him. He'd cleaned up, shaved, changed into fresh clothes that, while still plain cowboy fare, fit him well and showed off his powerful build. His dark hair was still damp, curling more noticeably now, and without the trail dust, Grace could see his features more clearly. He had a strong jaw, a straight nose that looked like it might have been broken once, and those remarkable eyes that seemed to take in everything. She walked over to where he stood just inside the doorway, looking slightly uncomfortable in the crowded room. "Mr. Armstrong, let me show you to a table. Just Isaac, please. Mr. Armstrong was my father, and he's been dead these 10 years. Grace felt a pang of sympathy. "Then you must call me Grace. Come, I've got a spot by the window that should suit you." She led him to a small table that did indeed offer a view of the street while also providing a clear line of sight to all the exits. It was the kind of spot a cautious man would appreciate, and from the way Isaac's shoulders relaxed slightly when he sat down, she knew she'd chosen right. "You're observant," he said as she handed him a menu written in her own neat handwriting. "You learn to read people when you run a hotel. It's a survival skill." Grace tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "Mrs. Chen's serving pot roast tonight, like I mentioned, but she's also got fried chicken and beef stew. All of it's good, I promise. I'll take the pot roast and whatever vegetables she's got to go with it, and coffee if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all." Grace hesitated, then asked, "Did you get your horses settled all right?" Isaac nodded. "Samuel at the livery is a good man, knows his way around horses. We talked for a while about breeding stock and market prices. He mentioned your father used to keep a few horses of his own." "He did." "He loved horses almost as much as he loved this hotel." Grace glanced around, making sure no one needed her immediate attention. "I had to sell them after he died. Couldn't manage both the hotel and the stable, and I chose the hotel. Must have been hard." "It was. But we do what we must." Grace straightened her spine, pushing away the old grief. "I'll get your dinner ordered." As she walked toward the kitchen, she felt Isaac's eyes on her and wondered what he saw when he looked at her. A capable businesswoman, a lonely spinster, or something else entirely, Mrs. Chen was at the stove, her gray hair pulled back under a scarf, her small frame moving with efficient grace as she ladled food onto plates. She looked up when Grace entered, her dark eyes sharp and knowing. "The new guest, you like him?" It wasn't a question. Grace felt her cheeks heat. "I don't know what you're talking about. He's a guest like any other." Mrs. Chen turned back to her cooking. "You have looked at door 5 times in last 10 minutes. You never look at door so much unless you waiting for someone." "He needs pot roast with vegetables and coffee," Grace said firmly, ignoring the comment. Mrs. Chen chuckled but didn't push further. While she prepared Isaac's meal, Grace took a moment to compose herself. She was being transparent, apparently, and that wouldn't do. She'd built walls around her heart after watching her father work himself to death for this hotel, after seeing what depending on another person could cost. She'd vowed to stay independent, to never need anyone else, to make her own way in the world. But when she brought Isaac's dinner out and saw the way his face lit up with genuine appreciation, when he thanked her with such warmth that it seemed to reach inside her chest and squeeze her heart, those walls felt suddenly less solid than they had just hours before. Over the next few days, Grace found herself increasingly aware of Isaac's presence in her hotel. He kept early hours, rising before dawn to tend to his horses and handle his business around town. He was polite to everyone, tipping his hat to the ladies, speaking respectfully to the men, and treating Grace with a courtesy that never felt forced or false. She learned things about him in bits and pieces. He'd grown up in Wyoming, the son of a ranch hand who died in a stampede when Isaac was 8. His mother had remarried, but Isaac hadn't gotten along with his stepfather, so he'd struck out on his own at 16. He'd worked as a cowboy, a ranch hand, a horse breaker, and eventually saved enough to buy his own breeding stock and start trading. "I like the freedom of it," he told her one morning when she found him in the courtyard, watching the sunrise. She'd come out to gather herbs for Mrs. Chen and had been surprised to find him there, sitting on the bench her father had built. "I can go where I want, stay as long as I like, move on when the mood strikes. No one to answer to but myself." Grace sat down beside him, the basket of herbs in her lap. "That sounds lonely." Isaac considered this. "Sometimes it is, but lonely is better than being tied to something that makes you miserable. I've seen too many people trapped in situations they hate, staying because they think they have to, until the life just drains right out of them." "Is that what happened with your mother and stepfather?" "Part of it. My stepfather was a hard man, quick with his fists and his temper. My mother stayed because she thought she needed a man to take care of her and me, but really, she would have been better off on her own." Isaac turned to look at Grace, his expression serious. "You've never married. Can I ask why?" The question should have felt intrusive, but somehow it didn't. Grace found herself answering honestly. "Because everyone who proposed wanted the hotel more than they wanted me. They saw a good business and a woman who could run it, and they thought marrying me would be an easy path to prosperity. But I watched my father build this place from nothing, and I'll be damned if I hand it over to some man who thinks he can do better just because he wears pants." Isaac laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I imagine you sent them packing with their tails between their legs. Something like that." Grace smiled despite herself. "The town thinks I'm a dried-up old maid, too stubborn for my own good. The town is full of fools then." "You're neither dried up nor old, and being stubborn isn't a flaw when you're fighting for something that matters." Isaac's voice softened. "This place is special because of you, Grace. I can feel it. The way you've made every room comfortable, the way you know what your guests need before they ask, the way you've created something that feels like more than just a building. You've made it feel like a home." Grace's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "That's what my father wanted. He used to say that people traveling through hard country needed a place where they could rest, where they could feel safe and cared for, even if just for a night or two. He raised a good daughter." They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun continued its climb, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Grace felt something unfurling in her chest, something that had been closed tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. It was dangerous, this feeling. Isaac had been clear that he didn't stay in one place, that he valued his freedom above all else. Getting attached to him would only lead to heartache. But as the days passed, Grace found it increasingly difficult to maintain her distance. Isaac had a way of appearing when she needed help, whether it was carrying heavy supplies from the mercantile, fixing a loose board on the front steps, or simply offering a sympathetic ear when a difficult guest left her frustrated. He never made a show of it, never acted like he expected anything in return. He just helped, quietly and efficiently, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. One afternoon, Grace was in the office doing accounts when she heard raised voices from the lobby. She hurried out to find a man she recognized as Charlie Dawson, a local drunk known for causing trouble, leaning heavily on her front desk and demanding a room despite clearly having no money to pay for it. "I said we're full," Grace told him firmly, though in truth she had 2 empty rooms. She knew better than to let Charlie Dawson sleep under her roof. He'd steal anything he could carry and leave the place reeking of whiskey. "You're lying." Charlie's words slurred together. "I can see the keys right there on the board. Give me a room, or I'll tell everyone in town what kind of establishment you're really running here." "Are you threatening me?" Grace's voice went cold. "I'm just saying, a woman alone running a hotel, taking in strange men all the time. People might start to wonder what else you're selling besides beds and meals." Grace's hand clenched into a fist. She was about to respond when Isaac appeared, moving with deceptive casualness down the stairs. He'd been up in his room, but somehow he'd heard the commotion. "There's a problem here." Isaac's voice was mild, but there was steel underneath it. Charlie turned, swaying slightly. "Who the hell are you? A guest who doesn't appreciate being disturbed by drunken fools making accusations they can't back up." Isaac moved to stand beside Grace, and she felt the solid warmth of his presence like a shield. "I think the lady asked you to leave." "Or what?" Charlie puffed up his chest, trying to look threatening despite the fact that he could barely stand straight. "Or I'll help you leave." "Your choice which way it goes." Isaac's hand rested casually on his belt near his gun, though he didn't draw it. The message was clear enough. Charlie looked between them, calculating his odds and apparently not liking what he found. "Fine. Don't need your fancy hotel anyway. But you haven't heard the last of this." He stumbled toward the door, nearly falling down the front steps before catching himself on the railing. Grace watched him go, her whole body trembling with a mixture of anger and relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Isaac turned to face her fully. "He was threatening you, and I won't stand by and let that happen. Not to you." The way he said those last words made Grace's pulse quicken. "Isaac, I can handle myself. I've been dealing with Charlie Dawson and men like him for years." "I know you can, but that doesn't mean you should have to deal with them alone." His eyes searched hers. "Grace, I've been in Bandera for a week now, and in that time, I've seen how hard you work, how much you care about this place and the people in it. You deserve better than to be disrespected by someone like Charlie Dawson." Grace didn't know what to say. She'd grown so used to fighting her own battles, to standing alone against whatever challenges came her way, that having someone step up beside her felt both strange and wonderful. "You're a good man, Isaac Armstrong." "I'm trying to be." He smiled, that slight upturn of his lips that she'd come to watch for. "Listen, I know this is forward of me, but I was wondering if you might be free tomorrow evening. I'd like to take you to dinner if you'd allow it. Somewhere other than your own dining room, so you can actually enjoy the meal instead of worrying about everyone else. Grace's heart did a complicated flip in her chest. Are you asking to court me? I suppose I am, though I'll understand if you say no. I'm not exactly a good prospect, being a drifter and all. Isaac looked uncharacteristically uncertain. But I'd like the chance to spend time with you, away from the hotel, where you can just be Grace instead of Miss Harper, the proprietor. She should say no. Every logical part of her brain screamed that getting involved with a man who'd admitted he never stayed anywhere long was a terrible idea. But her heart, that traitorous organ that had started beating differently the moment Isaac walked through her door, wanted nothing more than to say yes. I'd like that, she heard herself say. There's a restaurant on the edge of town, run by a German family. They serve schnitzel on Saturday nights. I haven't been there in months because I'm always here managing dinner service. Isaac's face broke into a genuine smile, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. Then it's a date. I'll come by at 7 tomorrow evening and we'll have ourselves a proper night out. After he went back upstairs, Grace stood in the empty lobby, pressing her hands to her warm cheeks. She was going on a date. At 26 years old, having turned down every proper suitor who'd come calling, she was going on a date with a horse-trading cowboy who'd be leaving town in a matter of weeks. Mrs. Chen found her standing there and gave her a knowing look. Finally. I was wondering how long you two would dance around each other. I don't know what I'm doing, Grace admitted. This is foolish. He's going to leave and I'm going to be here and nothing can come of it. Maybe, maybe not. Mrs. Chen patted her arm. But maybe sometimes, Grace, it is okay to just enjoy something good while it is here, instead of always worrying about when it will end. The next evening, Grace spent longer than necessary getting ready. She wore her best dress, a deep green that brought out her eyes, and let her hair down from its usual severe bun, pinning it instead in a softer style that allowed curls to frame her face. She felt nervous in a way she hadn't experienced since childhood, stomach fluttering with a mixture of anticipation and fear. When Isaac came to collect her, dressed in clothes that were clearly his best, hair combed back and jaw freshly shaved, the look in his eyes made every minute of preparation worthwhile. "You're beautiful," he said simply, and Grace believed him. They walked through the early evening streets of Bandera, past the saloons and shops that were lighting their lamps as dusk settled over the town. Isaac offered his arm and Grace took it, feeling the strength beneath his sleeve, the solidness of him beside her. People watched them pass, and Grace knew there would be talk tomorrow, but she found she didn't care as much as she thought she would. The German restaurant was cozy and warm, filled with the smell of good food and the sound of friendly chatter. The owner, Herr Mueller, greeted them with enthusiasm and showed them to a quiet table near the back. Over plates of perfectly prepared schnitzel and buttery spätzle, Grace and Isaac talked for hours. She learned about his dreams of one day having his own ranch, a place where he could breed and train horses without having to constantly move around. He talked about the beauty of the mountains in Colorado, the way the aspens turned gold in the fall, and the air smelled clean and sharp. He asked her about her childhood, and she found herself telling stories she hadn't shared in years, about her father teaching her to keep books, about the time she tried to cook for the hotel guests when she was 12 and nearly burned down the kitchen. "I can't imagine you as anything other than completely competent," Isaac said, laughing. "Oh, I've had my share of disasters. Ask Mrs. Chen sometime about the incident with the traveling salesman and the supposedly locked door." Grace took a sip of her wine, feeling pleasantly relaxed. Being a hotel owner means constantly dealing with chaos and trying to maintain the appearance that everything is under control. You do more than maintain appearances. You actually have everything under control." Isaac reached across the table and took her hand. "You're remarkable, Grace Harper. You've built something real and lasting, something that matters to people. That's more than most folks can say." His thumb traced circles on her palm, and Grace felt that touch all the way through her body. "It gets lonely sometimes, running the hotel, living in it, working all the time. It's like I'm surrounded by people constantly, but at the end of the day, when everyone's gone to bed, it's just me and the empty lobby." "I know something about loneliness." Isaac's voice was soft. "Being on the trail, moving from place to place, it gives you freedom, but it costs you connection. After a while, you start to wonder if anyone would even notice if you just disappeared one day." "I'd notice." The words came out before Grace could think better of them. "If you disappeared, I mean, I'd notice." Isaac's hand tightened on hers. "Grace, I need to be honest with you. When I came to Bandera, I thought I'd do my business, maybe stay a week or two, and then move on like always. But something's happened since I walked into your hotel. Something I didn't expect and don't quite know what to do with." Grace's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "What happened?" "You." Isaac met her eyes across the table. "You happened, Grace. And suddenly the idea of moving on doesn't hold the same appeal it always has. Suddenly, I find myself thinking about what it might be like to stay somewhere, to build something with someone instead of always being alone. Isaac, I don't want you to give up your freedom for me. I've seen what happens when people feel trapped, when they sacrifice what they want for what they think they should do. It turns them bitter and resentful." Grace forced herself to be practical, even though her heart was screaming at her to throw caution away. "You've been here less than 2 weeks. This feeling, it might just be the newness of it, the excitement of possibility. Or it might be real." Isaac stood up, pulling Grace to her feet, and led her outside where the night air was cool and the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I've known a lot of women, Grace. I've even thought I was in love a time or two, but I've never felt what I feel when I'm around you, like I've finally found the place I'm supposed to be." Grace wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to leave. I'm saying that your hotel, this town, you've gotten under my skin in a way I can't explain. I'm saying that for the first time in my life, I want to stay somewhere." Isaac cupped her face in his hands, his calloused palms gentle against her skin. "I'm saying I'm falling in love with you, Grace Harper, and I think you might be falling for me too." She couldn't deny it. Every defense she'd built, every logical argument against this crumbled in the face of his honesty and the truth of her own feelings. "I am. God help me, I am falling for you." "But Isaac, what would you do here? You're a horse trader. You need to move around for your business." "What if I didn't? What if I settled here, used your cousin's ranch as a base, built up a breeding program instead of just trading?" "It wouldn't be easy at first, but I've got some money saved and I know horses better than most." Isaac's voice was earnest, urgent. "I could make it work, Grace, if I had a reason to stay, if I had you." Grace felt tears pricking her eyes. "You'd really do that? Give up the freedom you love?" "It's not freedom if I'm always lonely. It's just isolation dressed up in pretty words." Isaac leaned his forehead against hers. "You made your hotel feel like home, Grace, not just for your guests, but for me. No one's ever done that before, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." She kissed him then, rising up on her toes and pressing her lips to his, pouring everything she felt into that connection. Isaac wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened until Grace felt dizzy with it, with the taste of him and the feel of his body against hers, and the overwhelming rightness of being held by this man. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac smiled at her with such joy that Grace felt her own face breaking into a matching expression. "So, is that a yes? You'll let me stay? You'll let me court you properly?" "Yes." Grace laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Yes to all of it." They walked back to the hotel hand in hand, talking about possibilities and plans, about what Isaac would need to do to establish himself in Bandera, about how they would navigate being together while also maintaining the propriety necessary for Grace's business reputation. It was practical and romantic all at once, which felt perfectly suited to both of them. But when they reached the Harper House Hotel, they found trouble waiting for them in the form of Sheriff Tom Bradley standing on the front steps with a grim expression on his weathered face. "Grace, Isaac." He nodded to them both. "Glad I caught you. We've got a situation developing and I need to warn you about it." Grace felt her happiness drain away, replaced by cold dread. "What kind of situation? You remember that gang I mentioned, the one that's been hitting ranches?" "We got word they're planning to hit Bandera itself. They've been casing the town, and according to my sources, they're particularly interested in places that might have money stored, places like hotels and banks." Sheriff Bradley looked apologetic. "I'm telling all the business owners to be on alert. Lock your doors, keep your valuables hidden, and if you see anything suspicious, get word to me immediately." Isaac's arm tightened protectively around Grace. "When do you think they'll come? Could be any day now. Could be tonight for all I know. These men are unpredictable and dangerous. They've killed before, and they won't hesitate to do it again if anyone gets in their way." The sheriff turned to Grace specifically. "I know you've got a rifle behind your front desk, Grace. Make sure it's loaded and ready. And Isaac, I'm glad you're staying here. Extra eyes and an extra gun might make the difference." After the sheriff left to warn other business owners, Grace and Isaac went inside. The lobby was quiet, most guests already retired to their rooms for the night. Mrs. Chen was cleaning up the kitchen, and Grace went to tell her the news, instructing her to go home to her small house behind the livery and stay there until the danger passed. "I am not leaving you alone to face outlaws," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "I have been with this hotel since you were a girl. I will not abandon it now." They argued, but Grace knew Mrs. Chen well enough to recognize immovable stubbornness when she saw it. Instead, they compromised with Mrs. Chen agreeing to sleep in one of the ground-floor storage rooms where she'd be safer than in her own home, but still able to help if trouble came. Isaac checked all the windows and doors, ensuring they were secure, and brought his rifle down from his room. He and Grace sat together behind the front desk as the night deepened, keeping watch, neither willing to sleep while the threat loomed. "Some first date," Isaac said ruefully. "I promise you, next time I'll make sure there are no outlaw gangs involved." Grace managed a small smile. "Well, it's certainly been memorable." She leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Isaac, if they do come, promise me you'll be careful. Don't try to be a hero. Money and valuables can be replaced. You can't. The same goes for you." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "Though knowing you, you'd probably charge at them with nothing but your account books as weapons if they threatened your hotel." "Probably," Grace admitted. "This place is everything to me, Isaac. It's my father's legacy, my life's work. The idea of those men coming in here, destroying what we've built, stealing what we've worked for, it makes me furious." "I understand. But Grace, you're worth more than any building, no matter how much it means to you. If they come and it's a choice between the hotel and your life, you choose your life. Promise me." Grace couldn't promise that, not honestly, so she changed the subject instead. They talked quietly through the night, about everything and nothing, about their pasts and possible futures, about the dreams they'd never shared with anyone else. As dawn began to break with no sign of the outlaws, they both relaxed slightly. Maybe they changed their plans, Grace said hopefully. But even as the words left her mouth, the sound of horses approaching at speed made them both tense. Isaac moved to the window, carefully peering out between the curtains. 6 men, all armed. They're stopping in front of the bank, but they're looking this direction too. Isaac's voice was calm but alert. Grace, go wake Mrs. Chen and any guests on the ground floor. Get them into the storage room and tell them to stay quiet and hidden. Do it now. Grace wanted to argue, wanted to stay with him, but she also knew he was right. She moved quickly through the hotel, knocking on doors, speaking in urgent whispers, herding confused and frightened guests to the storage room where Mrs. Chen was already gathering supplies and preparing for the worst. She was heading back to the lobby when she heard the front door crash open. Male voices, rough and demanding, filled the space. Grace pressed herself against the wall in the hallway, heart pounding, trying to see what was happening without being seen herself. We know you've got money here. One of the men, tall with a scarred face and cruel eyes, had his gun pointed at Isaac. Hotels always keep a cash box for paying suppliers. Hand it over and nobody gets hurt. The owner's not here right now. She's out of town and took the cash box with her. Isaac's voice was steady, giving nothing away. I'm just a guest. I don't have access to that kind of thing. Liar. Another man, shorter but meaner looking, moved forward. We watched this place. We know a woman runs it, pretty redhead. Where is she? Grace's blood ran cold. They'd been watching her, planning this. The violation of it made her feel sick. I told you, she's out of town. Went to San Antonio 2 days ago. Isaac shifted his stance slightly, and Grace could see he was positioning himself between the outlaws and the hallway where she was hiding. You can tear the place apart looking for her, but you won't find her. You're wasting your time. The tall man moved with shocking speed, slamming the butt of his gun into Isaac's stomach. Isaac doubled over but didn't go down, and when he straightened, his face was set in hard lines that made him look dangerous in a way Grace hadn't seen before. You've got a smart mouth for a man with 3 guns pointed at him. The outlaw cocked his weapon. Maybe I should just shoot you and find the woman myself. Search every room if I have to. You could do that. Isaac's voice was cold as winter. But you should know that the sheriff knows you're planning to hit Bandera. He's probably already on his way with a dozen armed men. You shoot me, you'll bring them running. You want to risk that for whatever small amount of money might be in a hotel cash box. Grace could see the outlaws exchanging uncertain glances. They hadn't expected resistance, hadn't expected to be known. The element of surprise was gone, and with it, much of their advantage. We should go, one of them muttered. Hit the bank and get out. This is taking too long. But the tall leader wasn't ready to give up. Not without something to show for it. You, Cowboy, empty your pockets. And take off that gun belt. Real slow. Isaac complied, moving carefully, and Grace realized he was buying time, hoping the sheriff would indeed arrive. But she also saw the calculation in the outlaw's eyes, the way they were getting nervous and therefore more dangerous. Nervous men with guns made fatal mistakes. She couldn't just hide and hope for the best. This was her hotel, her responsibility, and the man she loved was in danger because of her. Grace stepped out of the hallway, her father's rifle held steady in her hands. She'd grown up hunting with him, knew how to shoot as well as any man in Bandera. I think you gentlemen should leave. Now, all heads turned toward her. Isaac's face went pale. Grace, no, get back. This is my hotel, these are my guests, and you are not welcome here. Grace kept the rifle trained on the tall leader. The sheriff is coming, just like Isaac said. You can leave now with nothing, or you can stay and end up dead or in jail. Your choice. The leader's face twisted with anger. You're making a big mistake, lady. Put that rifle down before someone gets hurt. The only ones getting hurt will be you if you don't turn around and walk out that door. Grace's voice didn't waver, even though inside she was terrified. I've already lost my father. I fought to keep this hotel alive against debt and drought and every man who thought a woman couldn't manage a business. I'm not about to lose it to a bunch of cowards who prey on hardworking people. So I'll ask you one more time. Leave. Now. For a moment, time seemed to suspend. Grace could see the outlaw weighing his options, could see the moment he decided to call her bluff. His gun swung toward her, and she knew she had only a split second to react. But Isaac was faster. He lunged forward, tackling the leader around the waist and sending them both crashing to the floor. His gun went off, the bullet embedding itself harmlessly in the ceiling, and then everything dissolved into chaos. The other outlaws reached for their weapons. Grace fired, aiming high and to the side, not wanting to kill anyone but making it clear she would if necessary. The blast was deafening in the enclosed space. Outside, she heard shouts and running footsteps, and then Sheriff Bradley and his men were pouring through the door, guns drawn. The fight was brief and brutal. 2 outlaws tried to run and were tackled in the street. The others surrendered when they realized they were outnumbered and outgunned. Isaac, breathing hard and sporting what would soon be a spectacular black eye, picked himself up off the floor and immediately came to Grace. Are you all right? Are you hurt? His hands ran over her arms, checking for injuries. I'm fine, but you're not. Grace reached up to touch his face gently. That eye looks terrible. Worth it. Isaac pulled her close, rifle and all, and held her tight. When I saw you step out with that gun, my heart nearly stopped. Don't ever scare me like that again. I had to. They were going to hurt you. Grace's voice was muffled against his chest. I couldn't just hide and let that happen. Sheriff Bradley came over, looking equal parts relieved and exasperated. You two are either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. But you did good work here. With these men caught, the gang's broken. The trouble should die down now. After the outlaws were hauled away and statements given, Grace and Isaac finally had a moment alone. The guests had emerged from hiding, some shaken, some excited to have been part of such drama, but all grateful to Grace for protecting them. Mrs. Chen made a huge breakfast for everyone, and the hotel took on a festive atmosphere despite the early morning excitement. But Grace felt suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her shaky and overwhelmed. Isaac noticed immediately. He took her hand and led her upstairs to his room, sitting her down on his bed and kneeling in front of her. Let it out, he said gently. You held it together beautifully down there, but you don't have to be strong for me. Let it out, Grace. And she did. She cried for the fear she'd felt, for the danger they'd been in, for the violation of her home and the threat to everything she'd worked for. She cried for her father, who'd built this hotel but hadn't lived to see her defend it. She cried for the loneliness she'd carried for so long, and the terrifying joy of finally letting someone in. Isaac held her through all of it, stroking her hair and murmuring comfort, never telling her to stop or calm down, just letting her feel everything she needed to feel. When she finally wound down to hiccuping sniffles, he handed her his handkerchief and smiled at her with such tenderness it made her want to start crying all over again. I love you, she said, the words feeling both strange and perfect in her mouth. I know it's too soon and probably foolish, but I love you, Isaac. You make this place feel like more than a hotel. You make it feel like a home. You make me feel like I'm not alone anymore. You're not alone. Not anymore. Not ever again if I have anything to say about it. Isaac kissed her softly. I love you too, Grace. I think I started falling for you the moment I walked through your door and saw you standing there with ink on your fingers and determination in your eyes. I just didn't know it yet." They stayed in his room as the morning progressed, talking about what came next. Isaac sent word to his cousin, arranging to meet and discuss setting up a permanent horse breeding and training operation in the area. Grace made a list of repairs the hotel needed, damages from the morning's chaos that required attention. But mostly they just sat together, hands linked, processing the fact that they'd almost lost everything before they'd even really begun. The weeks that followed were busy and full. Isaac moved out of room 12 and into Grace's private quarters, scandalizing exactly no one since they announced their engagement within days of the outlaw incident. The town, perhaps feeling grateful for their role in capturing the gang, embraced the romance rather than condemning it. Isaac's cousin, James Armstrong, turned out to be a cheerful man with a thriving ranch and a willingness to go into partnership with Isaac on a horse breeding venture. They worked out terms that gave Isaac the freedom he needed while providing the stability Grace required. Isaac would live at the hotel with Grace, travel when necessary to buy stock or make sales, but always return to Bandera, to the Harper House Hotel, to home. Grace found that running the hotel with a partner, with Isaac beside her, was completely different from running it alone. He didn't try to take over or change how she did things. Instead, he supported her decisions, helped with the physical work, and brought ideas that complemented rather than competed with hers. Together, they made improvements, adding a small stable behind the hotel where Isaac could keep his breeding stock close and offer livery services to guests. They were married in November, just 2 months after Isaac had first walked through the door. The ceremony was simple, held in the hotel's courtyard with the whole town invited. Mrs. Chen made a wedding cake that people talked about for years afterward, and Sheriff Bradley gave Grace away since her father wasn't there to do it. Grace wore a dress of ivory silk that Mrs. Mueller from the German restaurant had helped her sew, and Isaac wore a new suit that made him look both handsome and slightly uncomfortable. But when they exchanged vows, when Isaac slipped a plain gold band on Grace's finger and promised to love and cherish her all his days, the discomfort vanished, replaced by a joy so pure it shone from both their faces. "You made this place feel like home," Grace whispered to him after the ceremony as they danced in the courtyard under strings of lanterns. "Not just the hotel, but my heart. You made my heart feel like home." Isaac pulled her closer, smiling down at her with all the love in the world plain on his face. "We made it home together. That's what matters. Not the building or the business, but what we've built between us. That's the real home." Their first year of marriage brought changes and challenges. The horse breeding business grew faster than expected, and Isaac found himself traveling more than he'd anticipated, making connections and establishing the reputation for quality that would sustain them for years to come. Grace expanded the hotel, adding 4 more rooms and hiring additional staff to help manage the increased workload. But no matter how busy they got, they always made time for each other. Mornings in the courtyard watching the sunrise. Evenings in their private sitting room, talking over the day's events. Sundays riding out to Isaac's cousin's ranch, where they'd walk the property and plan for future improvements. Grace discovered that marriage to Isaac was nothing like she'd feared it might be. He never tried to control her or take over the hotel. When people assumed he was the owner now, he always corrected them, making it clear that the Harper House Hotel belonged to Grace Harper Armstrong. He was proud of what she'd accomplished, and that pride was genuine, never tainted by resentment or jealousy. In the spring of 1885, Grace realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with a complex mixture of joy and terror. Her own mother had died when Grace was young, and she had no clear memories of what good mothering looked like. She worried about balancing the hotel with a baby, worried about being enough for a child when she'd barely felt like she was enough for herself. Isaac listened to her fears late one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest and his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "You're going to be an amazing mother," he said with absolute certainty. "You take care of everyone who comes through this hotel, make them feel safe and valued. You'll do the same for our child. But the hotel takes so much time. What if I can't manage both? Then we'll hire more help, or I'll travel less. We'll figure it out together, Grace. That's what marriage means. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore." Isaac kissed her forehead. "We're a team, remember? Whatever comes, we handle it together." Their son was born in December of 1885, during a cold snap that frosted the windows and made the courtyard look like a winter wonderland. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Grace thought she might not survive it. But Isaac never left her side, holding her hand, talking her through the pain, and when their baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, the look on Isaac's face made every moment of suffering worthwhile. They named him Robert Thomas Armstrong, Robert after Grace's father and Thomas after the sheriff, who'd become a good friend to them both. Bobby, as he quickly became known, had his mother's red hair and his father's gray eyes, and from the start he ruled the hotel with an iron fist disguised as baby charm. Grace found that motherhood, while exhausting, brought unexpected joy. She'd been right that balancing a baby and a business was challenging, but Isaac had been right too that they could handle it together. They hired a young woman named Sarah to help with Bobby during the busy daytime hours, and Mrs. Chen, who developed a powerful grandmother-like attachment to the baby, always seemed to be available when extra hands were needed. The hotel thrived. Word spread about the Harper House Hotel's combination of comfort, safety, and excellent food. They became known as the best accommodation between San Antonio and the Hill Country, and they were often fully booked weeks in advance. Grace hired more staff, trained them carefully, and found that delegating was easier when she had people she trusted and a family that needed her attention too. Isaac's horse business flourished as well. The breeding program he'd established with his cousin produced sought-after stock, and Isaac developed a reputation as someone who could train even the most difficult horses. He still traveled, but never for more than a few days at a time, and he always returned with stories and gifts for Grace and Bobby. In the summer of 1887, Grace found herself pregnant again. This time the news brought more joy than fear, and when their daughter was born the following spring, healthy and beautiful with dark hair and green eyes, their family felt complete. They named her Rebecca Catherine, and she was quieter than her brother but just as determined. From the start, Bobby was fiercely protective of his baby sister, toddling after her cradle and trying to help in ways that were more hindrance than assistance. But his heart was in the right place, and Grace often found herself watching her children with a sense of wonder that this was her life now. The years passed in a blur of happy chaos. Bobby grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses as much as his father and had a natural gift for hospitality that reminded everyone of Grace. Rebecca was more reserved but thoughtful, with an artistic talent that emerged early as she constantly drew pictures of the hotel, the guests, her family. The hotel continued to grow and evolve. They added a proper bathhouse, installed one of the first telephone lines in Bandera, and renovated the dining room to accommodate more guests. Through it all, Grace maintained the personal touches that had always made the Harper House Hotel special, greeting guests herself whenever possible, remembering details about return visitors, creating that sense of home that her father had envisioned. Isaac never lost his love of horses or the occasional need to travel, but he never again questioned whether he belonged in Bandera. The town was home. The hotel was home. Grace and their children were home. Everything he'd thought he needed to find on the trail, he'd discovered instead in the woman who'd offered him a room and somehow given him a life. One evening in the fall of 1892, nearly 10 years after Isaac had first walked through the doors of the Harper House Hotel, Grace stood in the courtyard watching the sunset. Bobby was 8 now, Rebecca 4, both asleep upstairs after a long day of helping around the hotel. Isaac came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Grace leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "I'm thinking about how different my life could have been. If you hadn't come here that day, if I'd turned down your request to stay, if I'd been too scared to let myself fall in love with you. But you didn't. You took a chance on a dusty cowboy with a dubious future and even more dubious prospects." Isaac's voice was warm with affection. "Best decision you ever made, admit it." "Second best." Grace turned in his arms so she could face him. "The best decision was keeping this hotel after my father died, even when everyone said I couldn't do it, because that decision led to all the others. It led to me being here when you needed a room. It led to us." Isaac kissed her, slow and sweet, and even after 10 years of marriage, Grace felt that kiss all the way to her toes. "I love you, Grace Harper Armstrong. I loved you when you gave me room 12 with the courtyard view. I loved you when you stood up to those outlaws with nothing but a rifle and pure determination. I loved you when you gave me our children, and I'll love you every day for the rest of my life. I love you too." Grace smiled up at her husband, this man who'd wandered into her life and changed everything. "You made this place feel like home, Isaac. Not just the building, but my whole life. You made my whole life feel like home." They stood together in the courtyard as the stars began to appear, as lights flickered on in the hotel windows, as the sound of evening life in Bandera drifted over them. Inside, their children slept safely. Upstairs, their private rooms waited, the bed they shared, the life they'd built together. All around them, the hotel stood solid and welcoming, a beacon for weary travelers, a home for a family, a testament to what could be built when two people decided to trust each other and take a chance on love. The years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and joys. They weathered droughts and economic downturns, celebrated weddings and births within their extended hotel family, said goodbye to friends like Sheriff Bradley, who passed peacefully in his sleep in 1894, and Mrs. Chen, who followed a year later, surrounded by the people who'd become her family. Bobby grew into a fine young man who took over much of the horse business with his father, while Rebecca discovered a talent for management and began helping Grace run the hotel. New guests came and went, some becoming regulars who returned year after year, and the Harper House Hotel's reputation continued to grow. In 1903, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Grace back to the German restaurant where they'd had their first date. It was still there, still run by the Mueller family, though Herr Mueller had retired and his son had taken over the business. Over schnitzel and memories, Isaac took Grace's hand across the table, just as he had 20 years before. "Do you remember what I told you that first night? That you'd made your hotel feel like home. I remember everything about that night." Grace squeezed his hand. "It was when I first let myself believe that maybe I didn't have to spend my whole life alone. I've been thinking lately about that word, home. Isaac's expression was thoughtful. When I was young, I thought home was a place, somewhere you could go back to. Then I spent years thinking I didn't need a home at all, that freedom and independence were better. But you taught me the truth. What truth? That home isn't a place, and it's not about being alone or independent. Home is wherever the people you love are. It's the life you build together. It's every morning I wake up next to you, every meal we share with our children, every guest we welcome together. You are my home, Grace. You always have been. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. And you're mine. You came into my hotel as a guest, Isaac Armstrong, but you became so much more. You became my partner, my love, my home. Everything I am, everything I've built, it's all better because you're part of it. They finished their dinner and walked home through the streets of Bandera, past familiar buildings and friendly faces. The town had grown over the years, becoming more settled and civilized, but it still retained that frontier spirit that had characterized it when they first met. When they reached the Harper House Hotel, lights glowing warm in the windows, Bobby and Rebecca visible through the glass as they managed the evening's activities, Grace paused on the steps. Isaac stopped beside her, following her gaze. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "Not just the building, but what it represents. My father's dream carried forward, our children learning the business, preparing to carry it into the future. All the people who have stayed here, all the lives that have intersected with ours. It's a legacy, Isaac. We've built a real legacy. We have." Isaac wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "And it's not finished yet. We've got years ahead of us, years to keep building, keep growing, keep making this place special." He was right. They did have years ahead of them. Years they filled with continued work and love, and the gradual transition of passing responsibilities to their children. Bobby married a rancher's daughter from the next county over and brought her into the family business. Rebecca fell in love with a young man who'd come through as a guest and stayed for Grace's cooking and Rebecca's smile. And they too joined the growing enterprise. Isaac and Grace became grandparents in 1907, when Bobby and his wife had twin boys. More grandchildren followed, and the Harper House Hotel rang with the sound of a new generation's laughter. Grace discovered that being a grandmother was perhaps even more rewarding than being a mother, because she could enjoy the children without the constant worry that had marked her early parenting years. Through it all, through every change and challenge, Isaac remained her constant. They'd built something real and lasting, not just in the hotel and the business, but in their relationship. They knew each other completely, could communicate with a glance, could work together seamlessly, could still make each other laugh after decades of marriage. In 1911, as Grace approached her 54th birthday, she and Isaac decided it was time to step back from daily management of the hotel. Bobby and Rebecca were more than capable of running things, and Grace found herself ready to enjoy the fruits of her life's labor rather than constantly working to maintain them. They didn't retire completely. Grace still walked through the hotel most days, offering advice when asked, chatting with longtime guests, ensuring that the standards she'd set were maintained. Isaac still worked with the horses, though he left the heavy training to Bobby and focused more on breeding decisions and strategic planning. But they also had time, finally, to simply be together. They took trips, visiting parts of Texas they'd never seen, even traveling to Colorado so Isaac could show Grace the mountains he'd told her about so many years before. They spent long afternoons in the courtyard, the same courtyard where they'd first shared sunrise and dreams, watching their grandchildren play and their children thrive. One morning in the spring of 1913, Grace woke to find Isaac already awake, watching her with an expression of such love it took her breath away. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Do I have something on my face? Just 30 years of laughter and love and life." Isaac traced her cheek gently. "I was lying here thinking about that day I rode into Bandera, dusty and tired and looking for nothing more than a quiet room and a decent meal. I had no idea I was about to find everything I'd been missing. We've had a good life, haven't we?" Grace reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. "Despite everything, all the challenges and difficulties, it's been good. Better than good. It's been extraordinary." Isaac pulled her close. "Grace Harper Armstrong, you made my life worth living. You gave me purpose and family and love. You made every place we've been together feel like home." They lay together in comfortable silence, listening to the hotel wake up around them, the familiar sounds of breakfast preparation and guests rising and the business of a new day beginning. It was the life Grace's father had envisioned when he built this place, the life Grace had fought to preserve when he died, the life she and Isaac had transformed into something even richer and more meaningful. In the years that followed, they watched their family continue to grow and flourish. The hotel remained successful, adapting to changing times while maintaining the core values of hospitality and care that had always defined it. Bobby's twins grew into fine young men, and Rebecca's children showed signs of artistic talent and business acumen that promised interesting futures. Isaac's health began to decline in his early 70s, a gradual slowing that he met with characteristic grace and humor. He could no longer ride for hours or train difficult horses, but he could sit in the courtyard and advise Bobby on breeding decisions, could walk through the hotel with Grace and remember all the stories these walls held. In the winter of 1923, Isaac developed pneumonia. Grace nursed him with fierce determination, refusing to let him go, but in the end, even her will couldn't hold him. He died peacefully in their bed, Grace holding his hand, 40 years almost to the day after he'd first walked into her hotel. "Thank you," he whispered with his last breaths. "Thank you for being my home." Grace felt her heart shatter, but she held herself together long enough to tell him the truth. "You were mine too, always." The grief of losing Isaac was profound, a physical ache that never quite went away, but Grace didn't collapse under it. She'd learned too much, lived too fully, loved too deeply to give up now. She continued to walk through the hotel, to visit with guests, to watch her grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow. She carried Isaac with her in every memory, every lesson he'd taught her, every laugh they'd shared. She lived another 7 years, years she filled with family and stories and quiet satisfaction. The Harper House Hotel continued to thrive under Bobby and Rebecca's management, and Grace took pride in knowing that what she and Isaac had built would endure long after they were gone. In the spring of 1930, Grace Harper Armstrong died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73. She was buried next to Isaac in the Bandera cemetery, under a shared headstone that read simply, "Together they made home." The Harper House Hotel stood for generations more, passed down through the family, always maintaining the spirit of hospitality and warmth that Grace had instilled in it. Guests still commented on how it felt different from other hotels, how it felt like home. The current managers, Grace and Isaac's great-great-grandchildren, preserved the stories and the courtyard and room 12, which became something of a legend. People said that sometimes, early in the morning, you could see 2 figures in the courtyard, watching the sunrise together. The guests who claimed to see them always said the same thing. They looked like they were home, and in a way they were, because Grace and Isaac had proven that home wasn't about a building or a place, not really. It was about the life you built, the love you shared, the family you created, and the legacy you left behind. They'd found home in each other in that moment when a dusty cowboy walked into a hotel and a determined woman looked up from her ledger and saw possibility instead of just another guest. They'd taken that possibility and built something beautiful, something lasting, something that proved love could flourish even in hard places, even in the rough and tumble world of the Wild West. They'd created a refuge, a sanctuary, a home not just for themselves but for countless others who'd passed through their doors over the years. The Harper House Hotel stood as testament to their love, solid and welcoming, a beacon in Bandera that said, "Here is a place where you belong. Here is a place where you matter. Here is home." And that, more than anything, was the legacy Grace Harper Armstrong and Isaac Armstrong left behind. Not just a successful business or a beautiful building, but the proof that home was something you could create, something you could choose, something you could build with love and determination and the willingness to take a chance on a stranger who might just turn out to be everything you'd been waiting for. Their story became part of Bandera's history, told and retold, embellished and remembered. But at its heart, it was always the same simple, powerful truth. A hotel owner fell for a cowboy guest, and together they discovered that home wasn't about the place at all. It was about finding the person who made every place, every moment, every ordinary day feel like exactly where you were supposed to be. Home was Grace standing behind her counter, looking up to see Isaac for the first time. Home was Isaac walking through that door and feeling for the first time in his traveling life like he wanted to stay. Home was every conversation in the courtyard, every shared sunrise, every challenge faced together, every joy celebrated as one. Home was the family they created, the business they built, the love they shared for over 40 years. Home was knowing with absolute certainty that you'd found the person you were meant to find, the place you were meant to be, the life you were meant to live. And in the end, that was everything that mattered. Not the violence of the Wild West or the difficulties of frontier life, not the social pressures or the business challenges or any of the obstacles they'd faced and overcome. What mattered was that they'd found each other, chosen each other, and built a home together that lasted long after they were gone. The Harper House Hotel still stands in Bandera, Texas, a testament to Grace and Isaac's love and vision. It's been renovated and modernized over the years, but the courtyard remains, and Room 12 is still there, still facing the garden where two people once watched the sunrise and fell in love. Visitors say there's something special about the place, though they can't always put their finger on what it is. It just feels welcoming, safe, comfortable. It feels like home. And perhaps, in some way, Grace and Isaac are still there, still making sure that everyone who walks through those doors finds exactly what they need. A refuge from the hard world outside, a place to rest and recover, a reminder that home isn't about where you are but who you're with. Their story, like all the best love stories, is ultimately about transformation. Isaac transformed from a restless drifter into a devoted husband and father. Grace transformed from a lonely proprietor into a beloved matriarch. Together, they transformed a simple hotel into a true home, proving that the Wild West could be gentled by love, that violence and chaos could be countered with hospitality and care, that two people willing to take a chance on each other could create something that endured for generations. As the sun sets over Bandera now, casting golden light through the courtyard of the Harper House Hotel, you can almost see them there. Grace with her auburn hair and determined green eyes, Isaac with his storm-gray gaze and quiet strength, sitting together on the bench, hands linked, watching another day end and feeling grateful for every moment they'd been given together. "You made this place feel like home," Grace would say, and Isaac would smile and pull her closer and reply with absolute truth. "No, Grace, we made it home together, and that's made all the difference." And it had. It truly had. Because in the end, that's what love does. It makes the ordinary extraordinary, the simple profound, the temporary eternal. It takes two separate lives and weaves them into one story, one home, one legacy that echoes long after the storytellers are gone. Grace Harper Armstrong and Isaac Armstrong lived their love story in an era of gunslingers and outlaws, of dust and drought, of frontier justice and hard-won survival. But their story could have happened anywhere, anytime, because the truth at its heart is universal. When you find the person who makes every place feel like home, you hold on tight and you build a life together, no matter what obstacles stand in your way. They found each other in Bandera, Texas, in September of 1883, and they loved each other until death parted them 40 years later. But love like theirs doesn't really end. It lives on in the family they created, the hotel they built, the countless lives they touched, and the story that continues to be told whenever someone asks, "What makes the Harper House Hotel so special?" The answer is simple, and it's the same one Grace gave Isaac all those years ago when he asked why she'd never married. Because she was waiting for someone who wanted her, not just what she could offer. Because she was waiting for a man who would see the hotel not as property to possess, but as a dream to share. Because she was waiting for Isaac, even though she didn't know it until the moment he walked through her door. And Isaac, who'd spent his whole adult life running from commitment and connection, found in Grace exactly what he'd been searching for without knowing it: a home. Not a place, but a person. Not a building, but a love that made every building, every place, every moment feel right. Together, they proved that even in the hardest places, in the roughest times, love can flourish. They proved that home is what you make it, that family is what you build, and that taking a chance on love, even when it seems impossible or impractical, is always worth the risk. Their legacy lives on in Bandera, in the hotel that still bears the Harper name, in the descendants who still carry their blood and their values, in the stories told by old-timers who remember when Grace and Isaac ran the place, and in the feeling that anyone who stays at the Harper House Hotel experiences: the feeling of being home. Because that's what Grace and Isaac gave the world in the end. Not just a successful business or a beautiful building, but a reminder that home is where love is, and love is what makes life worth living. They lived it, they proved it, and they left it behind as a gift to everyone who came after them. And somewhere, in some way that transcends understanding, Grace Harper Armstrong and Isaac Armstrong are still together, still in love, still making every place they are feel like home. Because that's what true love does. It endures, it lasts, it transforms, it makes everything it touches better, richer, more meaningful. It makes you home. And that, ultimately, is the greatest gift two people can give each other. The gift of belonging, of being seen and known and loved, of never having to face the world alone again. Grace and Isaac gave that to each other, and in doing so, they created a story that will be told as long as the Harper House Hotel stands. A story of love in the Wild West. A story of a hotel owner and a cowboy. A story of two people who took a chance, built a home, and lived happily ever after in every way that matters. The end.